When Daniel died, I thought the worst had already happened. I thought the day I buried him was the day everything would change. But I had no idea what was waiting for me next. The will reading was held in a wood-paneled office that smelled like old books and furniture polish. I sat across from people who had never once tried to hide how little they thought of me. His sister, Claudia, barely looked at me. When she did, it was with a smile that wasn't really a smile, more like satisfaction, like she'd been waiting for this day. She leaned toward me and whispered, "You'll get nothing." He only loved his real family. My hands were trembling, but I kept them in my lap. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. Daniel's mother, Evelyn, sat next to her, looking straight ahead like I didn't exist. I wasn't surprised. That was how she treated me even when Daniel was alive. To her, I was never good enough, not smart enough, not classy enough, not family. I sat up straighter in my chair, even though my whole body felt heavy. I was there for Daniel, for what we shared, for our daughter, Lily. She was just 7 years old. She still cried when she saw a picture of him. The lawyer, Mr. Webb, was quiet for a moment as he unsealed the envelope. His face didn't give anything away. He just nodded slightly before unfolding the papers. I could feel Claudia watching me, waiting to see me fall apart. She actually laughed. Right there, in that moment. A short, breathy laugh like she was already celebrating. "He probably left you a thank you note," she said under her breath. "If that." I didn't say anything. I wanted to scream, but I stayed silent. Because deep down, I didn't know what Daniel had done. We'd never talked about the will. In the last year, he'd grown quiet. He'd started writing a lot, spending time in his study. When I asked him what he was doing, he just smiled and said, "Making sure everything is in order." I thought he was preparing for the worst. I didn't think he was preparing for them. Mr. Webb cleared his throat. "This is the last will and testament of Daniel Larkins," he said, "dated 3 months prior to his passing." He looked at me then, and in that second, something changed in his expression. His voice stayed even, but there was something different in his eyes, like he already knew what was about to happen. "He left everything to her," he said, gesturing toward me, "all assets, accounts, real estate, and personal belongings." The room went silent, completely still. I could hear the second hand on the wall clock ticking. "What?" Claudia's voice cracked. Mr. Webb continued, ignoring her. "And he included a letter. He wanted it read aloud." Claudia stood up so fast her chair screeched. "This has to be a mistake. He wouldn't do that. He told us. He said he was changing the will. He told me I'd get the house." Evelyn turned to her, blinking, stunned. "What letter?" she asked, but her voice was suddenly softer, uneasy. Mr. Webb picked up a second envelope and looked down at it. His fingers brushed across the name on the front. Then he looked up again. "He left this letter," he said, "to explain why." I could feel my heart beating in my throat. I wanted to look away, to run, to cry, but I stayed, because Daniel had left me something more powerful than money or property. He had left me the truth. Daniel and I met when I was 26 and working at a bookstore in Charleston. He walked in on a rainy afternoon looking for something to read during a flight delay. He bought 2 novels and asked me to recommend a third. I gave him The Book Thief because I could tell he liked quiet stories about people who carried pain without showing it. He came back the next day, even though his flight had long since left. He said he never made it to the airport. He'd gone to a cafe, started reading, and realized he didn't want to leave. Not the city, not me. We had coffee that day. A year later, we were married. His family didn't come to the wedding. They said it was too short notice, that they couldn't take time off. But I knew the truth. They didn't approve. I wasn't from their world. I didn't have the kind of background that looked good in family newsletters. I had worked since I was 15, put myself through school, and didn't have a trust fund or a maiden name people whispered with reverence. Daniel didn't care about any of that. He said I was the first person who made him feel safe, the first person who saw him. But that didn't matter to his family. Claudia told him outright that I was a mistake. His mother called me polite, but ordinary, like she was being generous. Still, Daniel stayed by my side. For years, we tried to keep a polite distance. We went to family events when we had to, smiled through the small talk, and drove home in silence. There were no fights or screaming matches, just cold smiles, backhanded compliments, and being left out of every family photo. When Lily was born, I thought things would change. She looked just like Daniel. his eyes, his quiet little smile. I thought maybe, finally, they'd see me as part of the family. But even then, they made it clear. Evelyn would send gifts for Lily's birthday, but never call. Claudia would post photos of her own kids online and tag Daniel, but never acknowledge his daughter publicly. It was always Daniel and his girl, never Jenna and Lily. Daniel used to say, "We don't need them." And most days, I believed him. We had our own world. Saturday mornings with pancakes, family walks by the harbor, late-night movies after Lily fell asleep. He'd hold my hand during the credits and say, "This is all I ever wanted." But near the end, he changed. He got quieter, more distant. At first, I thought it was grief. He'd lost a business partner and friend in a sudden accident. Then his own health started to fail. He didn't tell me everything at once. He didn't want to scare me. But I saw it in his eyes. He knew. He started spending more time in his office, writing. He said it helped him feel in control. When I knocked, he'd smile and say, "Just putting things in order." We never talked about the will. It felt like something that belonged to another world. The truth is, I was afraid. I didn't want to think about a future without him. I didn't want to imagine Lily growing up without her father. And I didn't want to believe that Daniel, who had fought so hard to keep us safe from his family's bitterness, would leave me at their mercy in the end. When he passed, Evelyn didn't call. Claudia sent a single text. "We'll handle the arrangements." They didn't ask if Lily was okay. They didn't ask if I needed anything. And when the invitation came for the will reading, it felt more like a threat than a legal formality. The tone was cold, formal. No mention of condolences. Just a time, a place, a warning. I remember standing outside the office with Lily in my arms, her cheek resting on my shoulder, and feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Dread. Not because I feared they would take everything, but because deep down I worried Daniel had let them. And if he had, I wasn't sure how I'd ever explain that to our daughter. The room was too quiet. Even the ticking clock on the wall felt loud. I sat on the edge of a stiff leather chair while Claudia scrolled through her phone like she was bored out of her mind. Her heels tapped against the polished floor in sharp little beats, like a metronome measuring the time left until I broke. Evelyn, Daniel's mother, was seated across from me, perfectly still in a navy blue suit, pearls around her neck like armor. Her gaze wasn't on me. It never was. She looked past me, through me, as if I had somehow slipped into the room uninvited. She had always been like that. Polite in public, ruthless in private. Every time I tried to make conversation with her over the years, she'd respond with a tight smile and some subtle dig. She once said, "It's sweet how hard you try to keep up with Daniel. He always did date for comfort, not compatibility." I smiled back then, but inside I bled for days. Claudia finally looked up from her phone and said, "Do we even need to be here? I mean, it's obvious what's happening. He didn't update his will. He probably didn't have time." She turned to Mr. Webb, the family lawyer, and gave him a look I recognized well. It was the same one she gave waiters she thought were too slow. "I mean, this is all a formality, right?" she said, with a smirk creeping across her face. "We already know what's in it." Mr. Webb didn't respond right away. He adjusted his glasses and continued sorting the paperwork on the desk. His silence gave her room to gloat. "Honestly, Jenna," she said, turning toward me now, "you had your little fairy tale. You got your wedding, your baby, and your 10 years of playing house. But we both know Daniel wasn't going to let that continue. He told me he was fixing things." I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab something and throw it across the room, but instead, I just looked at her and said, "Daniel didn't talk to you in the last 6 months of his life. You have no idea what he was thinking." Claudia shrugged. "He didn't have to. Family doesn't need constant updates to understand each other. We just know." I looked at Mr. Webb then. He met my eyes for the first time and gave a small, unreadable nod. I wasn't sure if it was reassurance or just acknowledgement, but it was enough to keep me steady. Evelyn finally spoke, her voice cold but deliberate. "Daniel made mistakes. We all do. He let himself get distracted. But I believe, in the end, he realized where he truly belonged." She glanced at Claudia and gave the smallest approving nod. "And it wasn't here," she added, turning her gaze directly to me. Lily's name wasn't spoken, but I felt the sting of it anyway. This wasn't just about me. This was about my daughter, my little girl who had lost her father And now, potentially, everything else he had ever worked for. I clenched my hands together in my lap, my wedding ring pressed into my palm. I thought about all the nights Daniel had carried Lily to bed, all the times he'd sat beside me quietly while I cried over the coldness of his family. He had seen it all. He had held me. He had promised he would never leave me unprotected. Now I had to believe he meant it. Claudia leaned closer. Her voice was lower now, but sharper. You think this will be some kind of movie ending, but this is real life. There's no last-minute twist. There's just facts and signatures and bloodlines. You were never one of us. She leaned back with a satisfied sigh. And once the papers are read, you'll walk out of here with nothing but his name. That's all he left you. A memory, Mr. Webb cleared his throat. The papers were now organized on the desk. A thick envelope rested on top. We'll begin now, he said. The smirk faded from Claudia's face. I stared straight ahead, my heart pounding. Not from fear anymore, but from something stronger. Conviction. Mr. Webb's fingers moved slowly as he opened the thick envelope. The tension in the room had turned solid. No one spoke. No one moved. Even Claudia's smug expression had frozen, like she was suddenly unsure of her footing. I sat completely still, my back straight, my hands folded tightly in my lap. I could feel my pulse in my fingertips. It wasn't fear anymore. It was something sharper, something wired into my bones. I wanted the truth. Whatever it was, I was ready for it. Mr. Webb cleared his throat, unfolded the letter, and said, "This was written by Daniel Larkins and dated 3 months before his passing. It was delivered to my office by Daniel himself and witnessed under standard legal procedures." Claudia shifted in her seat. Her mouth opened like she was about to interrupt, but she didn't speak. Evelyn leaned slightly forward, her eyes narrowing. There was a flicker of something. Doubt, maybe. The first crack in her unshakable mask. Mr. Webb looked at me. Not coldly, not pitying, just steady, like he understood this was more than a legal formality. He turned his eyes back to the page and began to read. To my wife, Jenna, if you are hearing this, I'm gone. And I hate that. I hate that I'm not there to say this to you myself, but I need you to hear it clearly, without anyone else twisting the meaning. He paused. I could see the edge of emotion touch his voice, though he tried to keep it buried under professionalism. You were the only real thing in my life. You were the person who saw me when everyone else only saw what they wanted me to be. I didn't always say it. I didn't always show it well. But everything I built for you and Lily. Claudia let out a small sound, part scoff, part disbelief. But no one acknowledged her. Mr. Webb kept reading. My family never truly knew me. They knew the version of me that kept the peace, that smiled on holidays, that sat through lectures and nods of disapproval. They never knew the man who read poetry at 2 a.m. or cried watching Lily's dance recital from the back row. They never wanted to know that man, but you did. I felt my throat close. I held my breath and kept listening. I've seen the way they treat you. I saw how they looked at you like you were temporary, like you were a mistake I'd eventually correct. I'm ashamed I didn't defend you more, but I thought maybe, if I gave them time, they'd learn to love you the way I did. He paused. The silence in the room was so thick it felt physical, but they never did, and I realized they never would, so this is me defending you now. My chest tightened. My hands, still clasped, began to tremble. Mr. Webb continued, his voice slower now. I've left everything to you, every account, every property, every share, not out of spite, but out of love. Because you are the only person I trust to protect what matters. I know Claudia and Evelyn will be angry. I know they'll claim betrayal, but they never once showed up when I needed them most. You always did. Claudia stood up suddenly. This is ridiculous. This is fake. He said I would get the house. Mr. Webb didn't flinch. This is legally binding. If you'd like to challenge it, you may hire your own counsel. Claudia turned to her mother. Say something. But Evelyn didn't speak. Her eyes were on the floor, her mouth pressed into a thin line. For the first time since I had known her, she looked small. Mr. Webb folded the letter carefully and placed it back on the desk. Then he looked at me again. There's one more line at the end, he said. He unfolded the letter again and read, Jenna, this world was hard. You made it beautiful. Take what I've given you and make it brighter for Lily. The room was silent. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I just breathed. For the first time since Daniel died, I let myself breathe deeply, because he had kept his promise. He had chosen me, not with words whispered in the dark, but in ink, in law, in truth. And now everything was different. After Mr. Webb finished reading the letter, the room was still. Not silent in the way people fall quiet during a conversation. It was the kind of stillness that happens when something ends, or when something too big to understand happens and no one knows what to say. Claudia stood frozen beside her chair, her hands shaking slightly even as she tried to act outraged. Her mouth opened like she was going to launch into another attack, but no words came out. Evelyn sat with her eyes locked on the envelope, unmoving. Her face was calm, but I knew better. Her calmness was a shield. I had seen it before, at dinners, holidays, hospital rooms. It was how she avoided showing fear. But she was afraid now. I could see it in the way she clutched her handbag with white knuckles. I looked down at my hands. I was still holding Lily's favorite hair tie, the one she made me promise to keep in my pocket while I was away. I had brought it for comfort, a tiny circle of elastic and glitter, shaped like a star. It felt like an anchor in my palm. I wasn't alone in that room. I had a reason to stand tall. Mr. Webb slid a packet across the table toward me. This includes all the legal documents, transfer deeds, and next steps. If you need assistance executing the estate, my office is here to support you. Claudia finally found her voice. This is theft. It's emotional manipulation. She got him sick and isolated him, and now she's cashing in. Her voice cracked halfway through, and it took all the venom out of her words. She was breaking apart in real time, and part of me wanted to feel sorry for her, but I couldn't. Not after everything she had said. Not after how she treated me in the days after Daniel died. Not after she looked at my daughter like she was some mistake that shouldn't have been born. She pointed at me. You don't deserve this. You tricked him into giving up his legacy. I looked at her, calm now, my voice steady. I didn't trick him. I loved him. And you'll never understand the difference. She turned to Evelyn, desperate now. Say something. You told me this wouldn't happen. Evelyn finally looked up. Her eyes met mine for the first time. I expected more cruelty, another final blow. But all she said was, It's done. And with that, she stood and walked out of the room. Claudia stayed for a second longer, her eyes darting between me and the door like she didn't know where to go. Then she followed her mother, the sound of her heels echoing down the hallway, like the last gasp of a battle already lost. I turned to Mr. Webb. Can I keep the letter? Of course, he said. It's yours. He wanted you to have it. I took the page gently, as if it might tear just from being touched. The weight of it hit me all at once. His words, his trust, his love, written out in ink and sealed away for this moment. I stepped outside into the bright afternoon sun. The light hit my face, and for the first time in weeks, it didn't feel sharp. It felt warm. I walked down the steps of the office, letter clutched to my chest, and called Lily's name into the wind, even though she wasn't there. I wanted to tell her everything, that her daddy saw us. He protected us. That love is louder than hate when it's chosen every single day, even in silence. When I reached my car, I sat behind the wheel and unfolded the letter again. I read it 3 more times, each word pressed into me, branding my heart with something I had been missing since the moment he died. Certainty. He hadn't left me with a war. He had left me with peace. And in that moment, I understood. Daniel didn't just give me an inheritance. He gave me a voice. He gave me the right to stand in the center of the life we built and say, without apology, this was real, this mattered, and I belong here. 2 weeks after the will reading, I stood in the middle of our living room with the sunlight pouring across the floorboards, watching Lily dance in her pajamas. She spun in circles, arms out like wings, humming a tune only she understood. The sound of her bare feet thumping softly against the wood was the only music I needed. This house, the one Claudia said I would never keep, belonged to us now, not just legally, but in spirit. Every room carried a piece of our story, the nursery, where we first brought Lily home, The hallway where Daniel and I would leave notes to each other in the morning. Kitchen where he would pull me close while pancakes sizzled on the stove, just because he could, and yet it wasn't about the property. It never really was. Daniel didn't leave me money so I could win. He left it because he knew what I would do with it. He knew I would build a life for our daughter, one that wasn't shaped by bitterness or exclusion. He trusted me to carry his legacy forward, not through status or tradition, but through love that showed up every day. I kept his letter framed on the mantel. Some nights, after Lily fell asleep, I would sit in front of it and read his words again, not because I needed reassurance, but because I wanted to remember exactly how he saw me, not as a placeholder, not as a mistake, as his choice, his peace, his home. I opened a bookstore last month. It's small, tucked into the corner of a quiet street downtown. I named it Lark and Lily, a tribute to the two hearts that gave mine its shape. The space smells like paper and fresh coffee. Children come in with wide eyes and their parents linger in the corners thumbing through pages. It's the kind of place Daniel would have loved. He always said books saved him. I think they're saving me now, too. Claudia never followed up legally. She threatened, but it was noise. Empty, angry noise. Evelyn mailed a letter 3 weeks after the reading. It was typed. No greeting, no apology, just a statement that said she wouldn't contest the will, followed by a request to pass along a family photo of Daniel if I found one. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Forgiveness isn't something you owe to people who never ask for it. It's something you give yourself when you decide to stop carrying the weight of their hate. And I was done carrying it. Lily still asks about her dad sometimes. She draws him pictures and leaves them on her window ledge, saying he might see them from the sky. When she asks if he loved her, I don't hesitate. Yes, with his whole heart. I don't talk to her about the will. She's too young. But someday I will. I'll tell her how love doesn't always come with applause. How sometimes it's quiet and patient and brave. How her father stood up for us in the only way he could when time ran out. And I'll tell her that being chosen, truly chosen, is one of the rarest kinds of love there is. This story doesn't end with revenge. It doesn't end with courtroom battles or shouting matches or dramatic reversals. It ends with me in the garden, watching my daughter play, knowing that I am safe, that I am seen, and that I am enough. It ends with a door that stays open, with meals cooked slowly, with laughter returning to the walls of this home. And it ends with this: he loved me. He chose me. And in doing so, he gave me the courage to choose myself. So if you're watching this and you've ever felt like you were standing alone, like love passed you by or that family only counted when it came from the right names and places, hear this: you are not invisible. Real love sees you. And sometimes it takes time. Sometimes it comes in ink and paper. Sometimes it comes in the quiet. But when it comes, it stays. If this story spoke to you, if it made you feel something, whether it was anger, hope, or just the quiet reminder that you're not alone, I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment and tell me your thoughts. Tell me your story. I read everyone. And if you believe someone else needs to hear this, someone who feels overlooked, undervalued, or forgotten, share it with them. Because sometimes all it takes is one story to remind someone of their worth. Please give this video a like if it meant something to you. It helps more people find it. And if you want more real stories, stories that make you feel and think and maybe even heal a little, subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new one. Thank you for being here, for listening, for believing that love, even when it's tested, still wins in the end. Until next time, take care of your heart and the people who truly see you.